So if you've been married a long time, you've probably accrued a lot of property during your marriage, or at least some property, maybe even some debt together too. But you wonder when your divorce is coming, what means marital property versus what's personal property? If there are things you've brought into the marriage with you, whether it's some land you inherited from your family, maybe even a home that you owned before the marriage, that can be considered personal property that is not to be divided by the court. But anything you've gained during your marriage, even the increase in your retirement accounts, even the additions to those retirement accounts, investments, things like that, whether it's financial or even a physical asset like a home, can be considered marital property if it's accrued during your marriage. But keep in mind, if there are things that you have gotten from outside of your marriage, like an inheritance or like a home or a farm that you inherited from some family during your marriage, but you've never really used it as a family, you've never commingled it into your family estate, we could probably make a good argument that that is not marital property. It should be considered separate personal property that should not be divided by the court, and your spouse shouldn't get any share of that. You may wonder, what is commingling of funds? So think about it this way. If you're in your kitchen and you have a bowl of sugar, you have a bowl of flour, they sit as two separate things right here. Once you take a third bowl and you take a little sugar, you take a little flour, put it into the bowl, you mix them together, it's going to be hard to tell what is what. You can't tell what came out of bowl A or what came out of bowl B because those two items have been commingled into one bowl right here. That's kind of the same idea in a marriage with assets. If you have things that you brought into the marriage, things your spouse brought into the marriage, you keep them separate, you may be able to keep them separate. But once those things, especially money, gets brought into the marriage and put all into this middle bowl, and the sugar and the flour gets mixed together, that's commingled property. And now it's there to be divided by the court because you can't tell what came out of your sugar bowl or what came out of your flour bowl. So as you're heading into your divorce, you may feel like a dirty shirt because you think you're going to get taken to the cleaners, right? You wonder, what's going to happen? Am I going to get raked over the coals? Am I going to get just shot because I'm the guy or because I'm the girl who's made the money? And you wonder, are you going to get the raw end of your deal? You don't have to. In Alabama, our judges are going to want to give you an equitable or a fair division of the assets in your marriage. Whether it's money, whether it's retirement accounts or other things, you're going to get a fair distribution. And you need to make sure that the judge knows what you have put in so they can know what you should get out. It's not always going to be a 50-50, and more often than not, it may not be a 50-50 distribution, but it can be a fair and equitable distribution of the assets. And it's going to be important that your lawyer has all the information from you to be able to show to the court what you need, what you put in, and what you'd like to get at the end of the day, so the judge has all the information necessary to make a fair decision for you and your family. Because our judges have a lot of discretion about how assets can be divided up in a divorce to give you an equitable or a fair division of the property, it's very important to make sure that you have a seasoned lawyer working for you who not only has the experience, but also the knowledge to get all of your admissible and relevant evidence in front of the court. We have a whole team of folks who work here to put together the exhibits, the witnesses, and things like that you need to show the judge what should be a fair division of the property in your case that may not be a 50-50 division. So as an example, you may wonder, what about my spouse who makes a lot of money, maybe $200,000 a year, and I've been a stay-at-home spouse and taking care of the children? Are they going to get the house just because they're the one who's earned the income and paid the bills? No, because you as a stay-at-home parent have contributed just as much value to your family as they have. Now, you may not be earning a paycheck. You may not get a W-2 at the end of the year. Or you may not have any income to file on income taxes, but you've contributed value. And usually the reason that other spouse is able to spend the time working that job, spending those hours, earning that income is only because you have invested your blood, sweat, and tears in your family, allowing them to do that while you take care of the home. So it does not mean they're going to get everything just because they're the income earner. You should get a fair and equitable distribution of the assets in your family or the home or the income just because you have also contributed value. Even if it's not a financial benefit, you've contributed value to the home and you should be rewarded for that. So let's say you have these assets. You have some land that it doesn't even have a home on it. It's just some land that's sitting there. And you wonder, how is the court going to divide that up? Well, if you have multiple pieces of land or multiple homes or multiple cars, sometimes the court can look at, okay, this spouse gets the jet ski and this spouse gets the truck and this spouse gets this land and this other spouse gets this other asset, whether it's the boat, whether it's this vacation property, other things to get to as fair of a division as possible. Sometimes that's not possible because you only have one piece of land or you only have one home. And both of you are entitled to a share of that, but neither one of you is sitting on cash to be able to pay the other out. So sometimes that asset has to be sold at a fair market value to acquire the cash that can then be divided between the two spouses. All kind of ways it can play out. But more often than not, if you are a person who's fortunate and has some assets, you may be able to kind of do trade-offs for this person gets these things, this person gets these things to get to a fair division of all of those assets between the family members. You may have heard of the term mediation and wonder what is mediation and how does it affect my property division? Well, mediation is where both sides in a case, specifically in this case, a divorce, go to an independent third party who's a lawyer who's trained in settlement negotiations. And that mediator is going to help you reach a settlement of your divorce. Why is this important? Look, your marriage has lasted a long time, probably. You've probably been in this divorce case for a year or two, maybe. You're going to spend 6 or 8 hours with a judge. And you expect that man or woman in 6 or 8 hours to learn everything about your marriage and be able to make a fair division. That's a big gamble sometimes. It's much better for people to have some control of what your final order looks like. Because once you put it in the judge's hands, the control is totally out of your hands. So now, if you go to a mediator through your attorneys, you have yours, they have theirs. Everybody goes to this mediator's office and we work over the course sometimes of a day or longer to reach a settlement that works for me and works for you. That gives you as a spouse partial control over what your order looks like. The great thing about mediation is nobody can twist your arm and nobody can make you settle on anything. You're able to work something out that you can live with. You don't love it, but you're okay with it. And when we come down to the division of assets, you're able to decide what I want and what I'd be willing to give in order to get what I want. And we come down to a compromise situation where everybody gives a little to get a little. Lawyers often joke and say that a settlement that everybody hates is probably a pretty good negotiated settlement. There's some truth to that, though, because we often do give a little to get a little. And when it comes down to the division of your assets and things that matter to you, you don't want to risk those in court. And it's much easier on you to sit down in the mediator's office along with your attorney and be able to come up with something that you can live with to trade off to get the things that are really important to you. And then you walk out of the door that day with a signed agreement knowing what you're going to get and not have the risk of a trial. So if you're heading into a divorce and you have any questions about how your assets in your marriage may be divided up, reach out to our office now.